Hi there. I've done something that would totally surprise people if they knew. I'm thinking about sharing this secret online. I'm in my early 30s and have a beautiful child who just turned one. I dated a lot in college, but never found anyone I thought would be a good match for marriage. I ended up marrying my current husband after being introduced to him by our parents, thinking he would make a stable life partner. My parents live in the countryside, and I moved in with my husband from my older sister's place where I was living while working. My brother-in-law is a very warm person, always kind to my sister. That made me wish for a love like theirs. I even joked about being introduced to someone just like him. Our married life began at my in-laws' home in a provincial city close to my husband's workplace. We planned to move to an apartment. We won in a lottery once it was completed. My husband and I got along well in every aspect, including our conversations, personalities, and even our intimate life. Living in my in-laws' house, which wasn't very spacious, meant that our privacy was often compromised, leading to some embarrassing moments due to their curiosity and expectations. It made me realize things at a young age that many people never do. After a year of marriage, we were blessed with a child. Although I wasn't very old, I felt proud to meet the expectations of those who wished for us to have a child. I listened to classical music for the baby's brain development, focused on protein intake, and avoided foods that were bad for pregnant women. It made me understand the greatness of motherhood. Let me introduce you to my husband's family. His eldest sibling is his sister, who is 16 years older than him. She married in her mid-20s and has a son in his early 20s. Next is my husband's brother, who is 10 years older than him. My husband is the third of 3 siblings. His brother and his wife live near our in-laws and visit frequently for Parents' Day, the in-laws' birthdays, wedding anniversaries, or just when they miss them. Although I live with my in-laws, it feels like visiting my own family when I go to my brother-in-law's place. He often visits his parents to help them out. My brother-in-law is self-employed. Whenever there's an urgent matter at my in-laws, he would either leave his business to an employee or forward the business calls to his mobile phone and rush over. He's a very kind son-in-law, seemingly doing well in his business in the area. There's a saying that a person's character is reflected in their wealth. His business success always kept a smile on his face, and he was very generous. He would often bring home expensive seafood like king crab and lobster, emphasizing the importance of family time. If my husband had been self-centered and neglected his own family, it would have caused a lot of stress. However, my husband grew up in a harmonious family, knowing how to respect and care for his parents. In this regard, I really think I made a great decision marrying this man. Our house was always bustling because my husband's brothers frequently visited, and I was well aware of the busy nature of our lives. I have an older brother who lives abroad, and my parents, knowing they only wait for us, would often go down to help with farming whenever I had the chance, and spend time together by driving my mom around in my husband's car for her errands. It might seem endless and grumpy to care for a spouse's parents, but thinking of us as one family made it easier on my heart. The only hard part was not being able to dress comfortably at home, but I got used to that too. My brother-in-law started a business right after high school graduation. I had been working at a marketing company for 5 years before quitting when I got married. Despite his extensive experience in the field, He would sometimes seek my advice on marketing. He was almost 20 years older than me, so I respectfully shared my knowledge. My brother-in-law missed out on educational opportunities while making a living, and he was content with where he was. However, I thought a little more effort could really improve his business. When I showed him how others promote their businesses and engage with customers through social media and events, he was amazed. He thought his well-established local business didn't need extra promotion, but following my advice actually led to a 20% increase in sales. One day, he asked me to make time for a meal he wanted to treat me to. He suggested bringing my husband and baby, but mentioned it might be hard to eat properly while caring for the child. So he advised leaving the baby with my husband. It was a time when I was dealing with wrist inflammation from taking care of the baby, and the only time I was allowed out was for my hospital visits. So I was more than happy to join him. We went to a famous lakeside spot, filled up on well-known cold noodles, ordered coffee and desserts at a famous coffee shop, and caught up on missed conversations. The main topics were his business and parenting. He was like an uncle to me, had a way with people, so conversation flowed easily and comfortably. One thing I value highly is driving habits, and my brother-in-law was a very calm driver. Whenever I rode in his car, it was always consistent. The car was always tidy. A family-oriented man and successful in business. I think he deserves more than 200 points. While talking by the lake, he suggested we go out since the area had well-maintained walking paths and many photo zones. Conversing comfortably with my brother-in-law made me cherish this time even more. Feeling valued by him boosted my self-esteem. Despite the almost 20-year age difference, the respect and consideration he showed me, and his willingness to listen to my opinions, somehow made me feel a special affection for him. Whenever I offered advice, he took notes and really looked up to me. My brother-in-law was grateful for how well his business was doing thanks to me and wanted to repay me, but was hesitant about how I might take it. I told him we're family now, and there's no need for repayment. Giving him marketing advice was no trouble at all. Some people, you can guide them every step of the way, and they still don't make progress. But my uncle-in-law was savvy enough to put it into action, which is truly commendable. He insisted on giving me an envelope of money, saying he couldn't sleep at night if he didn't repay me in some way. He wanted the money to be our little secret for me to spend on whatever I wish without hesitation. After much refusal, I accepted it. That day, as we headed home, we felt as comfortable with each other as if I were his big sister and he the little brother. He had wanted to spend more time together, but I politely declined as it didn't sit right with me at the time. As my child grew to be 3 years old, we moved to an apartment in the metropolitan area we had applied for during our honeymoon. On moving day, my mother-in-law gave us a sum of money for household items we hadn't been able to buy yet. Could there be a more loving family? After moving out, our family of 3 lived in a free and easy atmosphere. A few months later, I heard my sister-in-law's son needed to move to our area because the slow internet speed at his current residence was hindering his work. The faster internet in the metropolitan area would allow him to work more efficiently, and he asked if I could help find a small place nearby. He was a good, diligent boy, not the type to bother me by living close. Despite concerns from acquaintances about the potential nuisance, I thought as his aunt, I'd manage just fine and found him a studio apartment across from ours. My husband took special care of our nephew, inviting him over for meals or bringing him food, knowing he might find it hard to cook for himself. One Christmas, our nephew brought a gift for our daughter, showing his affection despite his busy schedule. Contrary to our worries, he was preoccupied with his work, and if anything, my husband reached out to him more. Then my husband had to go on a business trip to China for 4 days. During this time, our child fell out of bed in the middle of the night, leaving me panicked and unsure whether their reaction was normal or not. The only family I have nearby is my nephew, and though I felt a bit guilty, I had to call him for help. I told him, "Emily fell out of bed and she's feeling dizzy. I'm really scared. Can you come with us to the emergency room?" He quickly responded, "Sure, Auntie, I'll bring my car around. Just grab your things and meet me in the parking lot." Thankfully, everything turned out to be normal after the checkup, and we were advised to just keep an eye on her at home after such a stressful visit. My daughter fell sound asleep as soon as we got back. That wave of relief made me yawn, but my mind felt clearer. My nephew mentioned that having a beer and going to sleep afterwards can lead to a really good night's rest. So, I ended up pulling out some beer I had bought a few days prior and started drinking. He also talked about how living here has been beneficial for his work, much like how my sister once helped my father's business thrive. He praised her, saying how lucky we were to have such a treasure in the family. It was endearing to hear such sweet words from a young person. As it got late, I couldn't bear to send him home. "Michael, you've had a beer. You can't drive. Why don't you stay over?" I suggested. He seemed tired enough to fall asleep right away and mentioned how it was a relief. Nothing serious happened today. Before heading off to the guest room, after taking a shower, I was wrapping myself in a towel when I ran into him waiting outside the bathroom. He had forgotten to use the restroom earlier and felt it would be rude to use the one in my bedroom. I was so startled that I dashed back into my room. As I was about to dress for bed, he asked, "Auntie, can we all sleep in the master bedroom? I don't mind sleeping on the floor." It seemed he wanted to protect his cousin and me. Despite the awkward arrangement, we couldn't quite settle down, and eventually, all squeezed into the smaller room together. He confessed he moved here mainly to be closer to us. My nephew epitomized a healthy young man in his 20s, especially since we hardly slept a wink that night. He mentioned that he could live elsewhere, but he wouldn't find anyone as bright and beautiful as his aunt anywhere else. He was also reminded by his father to take good care of me, suggesting it was to ensure I wasn't lonely in my husband's absence. My husband was in China at the time, so my nephew and I spent a lot of time together. I never imagined finding myself in such a situation. When my husband returned, I couldn't help but joke to myself about never expecting to be so popular with my in-laws' men. My nephew keeps in touch daily, but today doesn't seem to be a day fraught with danger. So it looks like we can meet up casually. Thank you for reading the musings of this audacious lady.